So the last topic in my presentation has to do with the flood operations of the Lake Del Valle Reservoir. I know that's of great interest to a lot of people, as we saw lots of, let's call it extra water in our watershed the last 2 weeks. So Lake Del Valle is owned and operated by the Department of Water Resources, and they have sort of three components, which is flood control, water supply, and also recreation at the lake itself. Their operations are strictly governed by the Army Corps of Engineers, and we'll get into a little more detail on the next slide. And the short story is the lake level rises because you've got water coming in from the upper watershed, entering into the lake. Lake level rises, and at some point DWR needs to release that water, and so that goes down into Arroyo del Valle, goes through Livermore, Pleasanton, along into Arroyo de la Laguna, along 680, and then eventually out to the bay. So we wanted to leave you with some take-home messages regarding Lake Del Valle operations. First, again, I can't stress enough these Army Corps operational guidelines that DWR is really bound to adhere to. Again, they look at inflow into the lake. This is runoff from the upper watershed that's naturally coming into the lake. They're looking at the lake elevation. Obviously, as the rainfall or the runoff comes in, the lake goes up. If they're releasing water into Arroyo Valle, the lake level goes down. They also are looking at a very specific gauge in Niles Canyon, which is in the Fremont area, and this is a gauge that is very specifically called out in their operational guidelines. So they look at all of this data, plus perhaps a little bit more, but they have some very strict items that they need to look at, and that really sort of dictates when and how they release water. You may have noticed or even heard that water in the water levels in Arroyo Valle and maybe even Arroyo de la Laguna, which receives that water from Arroyo Valle, was at times very, very high, and then sometimes would be lower, and then sometimes all of a sudden it'd be very high, and that obviously has to do with the releases from the reservoir, of course, in combination with the runoff, local runoff that's just happening in the watershed. So DWR is making those changes, those adjustments as they watch all of their parameters that they're required to watch, hopefully also getting some additional input from local entities and making those decisions to either release water, sometimes wait a day or two, turn it off, turn it back on. You get the picture. As those things happen, we do, as well as other agencies, get formal notifications from DWR. So as soon as they change their operational status, a few people here get notifications, so we know exactly what their plan is. And then internally, we have somebody who has been maintaining for a number of years just a sort of an interested parties list, and we might not tell them, we might not send out every single bit of information, but certainly during these last couple of weeks, as we've gotten these formal notices from DWR, those have gone out to that list of interested parties, just to make as many people as need to be aware. And then the final take-home message really is that this water that's being released, this is flood releases. This is not water supply. So as the reservoir fills with this influx of runoff from the upper watershed, there's really excess water in storage, and they need to release that in order to maintain the safety of the dam per their guidelines. And with that, I am happy to take any questions.